Hello, and welcome back to Code Your English, the place where we help you improve your listening, your vocabulary, and your confidence, one conversation at a time. Before we start today, I want you to ask yourself a few simple questions. Have you ever felt completely exhausted after spending a few hours with a large group of people, even people you actually like? Have you ever been told, maybe by a teacher, a coworker, or even a family member, that you are too quiet, as if quietness were something that needed to be fixed? Have people ever assumed you were shy, unfriendly, or distant, when the truth was that you simply enjoyed listening more than talking? And maybe, somewhere deep inside, you have wondered whether being an introvert makes it harder for you to build close relationships, harder to find real friends, harder to be loved the way you want to be loved. If any of these questions felt familiar, I want you to know something important right from the start. Today's episode is not about changing who you are. We are not here to turn quiet people into loud people or to suggest that introversion is a weakness that must be corrected. Instead, today we are going to explore something far more interesting and far more encouraging. We are going to discover that introverts often build some of the deepest, strongest, and most meaningful relationships that exist. While the world sometimes celebrates the loudest voice in the room, it is often the quiet observer, the careful listener, the person who thinks before speaking, who ends up creating the most powerful human connections. Many people misunderstand introversion. They confuse it with shyness, with sadness, or with an inability to connect with others. But today, we are going to challenge those ideas, one by one, and reveal the hidden strengths that come with a quieter personality. So sit back, relax, and get comfortable. Whether you are walking, cooking, commuting, or simply resting, this is the perfect time to improve your English while learning something valuable about yourself or about someone you care about. Let's begin. What does it really mean to be an introvert? Before we can talk about relationships, we need to build a clear and honest foundation. So, what does it actually mean to be an introvert? This word gets used so often in daily conversation, yet so many people misunderstand it completely. A huge number of people confuse introversion with shyness, with social anxiety, with loneliness, or even with poor communication skills. But these are completely different things, and mixing them up creates a lot of unnecessary confusion and unfair judgment. Shyness is often connected to fear, specifically the fear of being judged or rejected by others. Social anxiety involves genuine nervousness and discomfort in social situations. Loneliness is simply the painful feeling of being isolated from others. Poor communication is a skill issue that has nothing to do with personality type. Introversion, on the other hand, is none of these things. It is simply a natural personality style, a way that a person's brain and energy work. Introverts usually recharge their energy by spending time alone rather than by being around large groups of people. After a long day or a big social event, they often need quiet time to feel restored and balanced again. Introverts tend to enjoy meaningful, deep conversations far more than small talk, and they often think carefully before speaking, choosing their words with intention rather than speaking impulsively. They usually prefer quality over quantity in almost every part of life, including friendships, conversations, and experiences. Many introverts are excellent observers, noticing small details that others might miss, and they often feel most comfortable and creative in peaceful, calm environments rather than loud, chaotic ones. Think about daily life for a moment. Maybe you know someone who prefers a quiet dinner with one close friend rather than a huge, noisy party. Maybe you know someone who loves reading, writing, or simply sitting with their own thoughts. These are not signs of a problem. They are simply signs of a particular personality style, one that has existed throughout human history and has produced countless thinkers, artists, leaders, and loving family members. Unfortunately, society often misunderstands quiet people. Many cultures, especially fast-paced, extroverted ones, tend to celebrate boldness, loud confidence, and constant social energy. Because of this, quieter personalities can be mistakenly seen as weaker, less capable, or even less friendly. But as we will see throughout this episode, nothing could be further from the truth. The biggest myths about introverts. Now that we understand the basic meaning of introversion, let's break down some of the most common myths, one by one, and replace them with the truth. The first myth is that introverts don't like people. This belief usually comes from watching an introvert avoid large gatherings or leave a party early. But the truth is very different. Most introverts love people deeply. They simply prefer connecting with a smaller number of people in a more meaningful way, rather than surrounding themselves with large crowds. The second myth is that introverts cannot make friends. People believe this because introverts are often quiet in new social situations, which can look like a lack of interest. In reality, introverts are often excellent at making friends slowly, carefully, and sincerely. Their friendships tend to grow stronger over time, rather than fading quickly. The third myth is that introverts are always shy. As we already explained, shyness and introversion are two separate things entirely. Many introverts are confident, especially in situations or topics where they feel comfortable and knowledgeable, even though they still enjoy their alone time. The fourth myth is that introverts hate teamwork. People assume this because introverts may stay quiet during noisy group brainstorming sessions. However, many introverts are incredibly valuable team members because they listen carefully, think through problems deeply, and contribute thoughtful, well-considered ideas rather than rushed ones. The fifth myth is that introverts cannot become leaders. History has proven this myth completely false. Many famous and successful leaders throughout history have been introverts who led through calm confidence, deep listening, and quiet determination rather than constant loud speeches. The sixth myth is that introverts are boring. This myth often comes from surface-level judgments made during short interactions. But once you get to know an introvert personally, you often discover rich inner worlds, deep thoughts, creative ideas, and surprisingly funny personalities that only appear once trust has been built. The seventh myth is that introverts don't enjoy conversations. In truth, introverts often enjoy conversations more than anyone else, just not the shallow, repetitive kind. They usually crave deep, honest, meaningful discussions about real topics, real emotions, and real ideas. Understanding these myths and why they exist allows us to see quiet people with fresh eyes, eyes filled with respect rather than misunderstanding. Why introverts often build deeper relationships. Now we arrive at the heart of today's episode. Why do introverts often build such deep, strong relationships, sometimes even deeper than more socially active people? Introverts usually place enormous value on trust, honesty, loyalty, emotional safety, and meaningful conversation. Instead of trying to collect large numbers of friends or acquaintances, they often focus their energy on building just a few relationships. But these relationships tend to become incredibly strong, stable, and long-lasting. Let's talk about why listening creates stronger connections than talking. When someone truly listens to us without interrupting, without judging, and without immediately turning the conversation back to themselves, we feel deeply respected and valued. Introverts, because they naturally listen more than they speak, often make the people around them feel truly heard, perhaps for the first time in a long while. Silence also plays a powerful role in communication. Many people fear silence during conversations and rush to fill every quiet moment with words. But introverts often understand that silence can communicate comfort, safety, and deep understanding. Sitting quietly with another person, without needing constant conversation, can be one of the purest signs of true connection. Finally, consistency matters far more than popularity when it comes to lasting relationships. An introvert may not be the most popular person in a large social circle, but they are often remarkably consistent, showing up again and again for the people they care about, in small and large ways, year after year. This consistency builds a kind of trust that flashy, temporary popularity simply cannot match. The quiet superpowers of introverts. Let's now shine a spotlight on the hidden strengths, or what we might call the quiet superpowers, that introverts bring into their relationships. Being a good listener is perhaps the most obvious superpower. Introverts naturally focus on understanding others rather than waiting for their turn to speak. Thinking before speaking is another major strength. Rather than blurting out reactions, introverts often pause, reflect, and respond with more thoughtful, careful words. Observing small details is another quiet gift. Introverts often notice subtle changes in mood, tone of voice, or body language that others completely miss, allowing them to respond with unusual sensitivity and care. Remembering important conversations is closely connected to this strength. Introverts often recall small details that others shared weeks or months earlier, which makes the other person feel truly valued and remembered. Showing empathy comes naturally to many introverts, since they spend so much time reflecting on emotions, both their own and others. Remaining calm during conflicts is another underrated strength. Rather than reacting explosively, introverts often pause, think, and respond in a measured, peaceful way. Respecting personal space is deeply important to introverts, and this respect often extends naturally to the people around them, making others feel comfortable rather than overwhelmed. Being dependable is another quiet strength. Introverts often keep their promises and show up consistently, even without seeking praise or attention for doing so. Patience is a natural trait for many introverts, allowing relationships to develop slowly and steadily rather than being rushed. And finally, deep focus during conversations allows introverts to give their full attention to the person in front of them rather than being distracted by their phone, their surroundings, or their own thoughts. Each of these strengths on its own might seem small, but together they create relationships built on trust, understanding, and genuine care, exactly the kind of relationships that last a lifetime. Why listening is more powerful than talking. Let's take a deeper look at one specific skill: listening. This is not just a personality trait, It is also one of the most powerful communication skills a person can develop, and it is directly connected to improving your English as well. People love feeling heard. In fact, one of the deepest human needs is simply to be understood by another person. Yet so many conversations fail because everyone involved is focused on speaking rather than listening. We often prepare our next sentence while the other person is still talking, rather than truly absorbing what they are saying. Because of this, very few people actually practice real, active listening. Active listening involves several important elements. First, there is eye contact, which shows the other person that you are fully present and engaged. Second, there is the practice of asking thoughtful questions, questions that show genuine curiosity about what the other person just shared, rather than questions that shift attention back to yourself. Third, there is the skill of remembering details from previous conversations, which shows that you were truly paying attention, not just waiting politely. Finally, there is the practice of allowing silence, giving the other person space to think, reflect, and continue speaking without feeling rushed. This is exactly why introverts often become deeply trusted friends. Because they naturally listen first before speaking, people around them feel safe, respected, and valued. And here is a wonderful connection to language learning. Practicing active listening in your daily life will also dramatically improve your English listening skills, helping you catch new vocabulary, natural rhythms, and cultural expressions that you might otherwise miss. How introverts build trust slowly but strongly. Trust is not something that appears instantly. It is something that grows gradually, through repeated small actions over time. Introverts, whether they realize it or not, are often experts at this slow, steady process. Trust grows through small, consistent actions, keeping promises, even small ones, being reliable, showing up when you say you will, being emotionally available during difficult moments, not just convenient ones, being honest, even when honesty is uncomfortable, respecting privacy, never sharing someone's personal information without permission, and avoiding gossip, choosing not to speak negatively about others behind their backs. Trust takes time to build, and this is something introverts often understand instinctively. They are not usually interested in creating dozens of fast, surface-level friendships. Instead, they invest deeply in a smaller number of relationships, allowing trust to grow naturally, layer by layer, conversation by conversation. It's worth comparing fast friendships with lasting friendships here. A fast friendship might form quickly at a party or a social event, built on excitement, energy, and shared entertainment in the moment. But without deeper foundations, these friendships often fade just as quickly as they formed. Lasting friendships, the kind introverts often build, grow more slowly, but they tend to survive the test of time, distance, and difficult life circumstances, precisely because they were built on trust rather than temporary excitement. Why introverts prefer quality over quantity? One of the clearest patterns among introverts is a strong preference for quality relationships over a large quantity of relationships. Many people in modern society measure their social success by numbers: how many friends they have, how many social media followers, how many event invitations they receive. But introverts often measure relationships very differently. Having many acquaintances is not the same as having a few lifelong friends. Acquaintances might provide entertainment, information, or temporary connection, But lifelong friends provide something far more valuable: deep understanding, emotional support, and a sense of being truly known. Introverts often choose to invest their limited social energy into these deeper connections rather than spreading themselves thin across many shallow ones. Having fewer relationships is absolutely not a weakness. In fact, it often reflects wisdom about how emotional energy works. Every relationship requires time, attention, and emotional investment. By choosing carefully rather than trying to maintain dozens of surface-level connections, introverts protect their limited emotional energy and direct it toward relationships that truly matter. Think about time investment as well. A person with 2 or 3 extremely close friends might spend hours each week having deep, meaningful conversations with them, building an incredibly strong bond over months and years. Meanwhile, a person with 50 acquaintances might spend only a few minutes with each one, never developing the depth needed for a truly meaningful connection. Neither approach is wrong, but they lead to very different kinds of relationships, and introverts often naturally choose the path of depth over breadth. Challenges introverts face in relationships. Of course, in the spirit of balance and honesty, we must also discuss the real challenges that introverts sometimes face in relationships. Recognizing these challenges is not about criticizing introverts, it's about understanding them more completely. One common challenge is difficulty starting conversations, especially with new people or in unfamiliar social situations. Another is overthinking, replaying conversations in their minds afterward, wondering if they said the right thing or if they were misunderstood. Social exhaustion is another real challenge. Even enjoyable social events can leave an introvert feeling drained and in need of quiet recovery time. There is also the fear of being misunderstood, worrying that others might interpret quietness as rudeness, disinterest, or coldness. Difficulty expressing emotions openly can also be a challenge, since introverts often process feelings internally before sharing them. Some introverts also tend to avoid conflict, preferring peace over confrontation, even when addressing a problem directly might be healthier in the long run. Feeling ignored in group conversations is another common struggle, especially when louder voices dominate the discussion and quieter contributions go unnoticed. And finally, needing regular alone time can sometimes create tension in relationships with people who don't fully understand this need, especially partners or friends who are more extroverted. It's important to remember that these challenges are completely normal, and they do not represent personal failures. With awareness, patience, and practice, most of these challenges can be significantly improved over time, both by the introvert themselves and by the people who love them. Healthy communication for introverts. Building on these challenges, let's talk about practical, healthy communication skills that can help introverts strengthen their relationships even further. Speaking honestly is essential, even when honesty feels uncomfortable or vulnerable. Expressing your needs clearly, rather than expecting others to guess them, prevents misunderstandings and resentment. Setting healthy boundaries and communicating them respectfully protects your energy while maintaining strong relationships. Learning to say no politely without excessive guilt is a valuable skill that many introverts need to practice. Sharing feelings, even when it feels difficult, helps deepen emotional intimacy in any relationship. Starting conversations naturally, perhaps with a simple question or comment about something you noticed, can reduce the pressure of feeling like you need the perfect opening line. Maintaining conversations by asking follow-up questions keeps discussions flowing smoothly and shows genuine interest. Checking in with friends regularly, even with a simple message, shows that you care without requiring large amounts of social energy. Using technology wisely, such as sending a thoughtful text message when in-person conversation feels overwhelming, can help introverts stay connected in ways that feel comfortable. And finally, making small, consistent efforts rather than occasional large gestures tends to build stronger, more reliable relationships over time. Introverts in friendships. Let's now focus specifically on friendships. Introverts often approach friendship in a very intentional, thoughtful way. They tend to choose friends carefully, looking for genuine compatibility rather than simply accepting anyone who shows interest. Once a friendship is formed, introverts often show remarkable loyalty, standing by their friends through both good times and difficult ones. They tend to be especially present and supportive during hard times, offering quiet comfort, a listening ear, or simply steady presence rather than empty words. Being truly present is another hallmark of introverted friendship. When an introvert spends time with a friend, they are often fully engaged rather than distracted or half-present. Introverts also tend to accept different personalities well, since they themselves are used to being different from more extroverted people around them, which often makes them more understanding and less judgmental of others' differences. Perhaps most impressively, introverts often maintain friendships over many years, sometimes decades, even without constant contact. A true introverted friendship might involve months without conversation, followed by a reunion that feels as warm and comfortable as if no time had passed at all. This is a beautiful example of meaningful friendship, one built on depth rather than frequency. Introverts in romantic relationships. Romantic relationships bring their own unique dynamics for introverts. Emotional intimacy tends to be extremely important, often more important than surface-level excitement or constant activity. Introverts typically crave deep conversations with their romantic partners, discussions about values, dreams, fears, and meaningful life experiences, rather than only casual small talk. Loyalty and respect are foundational qualities that introverts bring into romantic relationships, often valuing a steady, trustworthy partner over an exciting but unpredictable one. Listening plays a central role here as well. Introverted partners often make their significant other feel deeply understood through careful, attentive listening. Handling disagreements calmly is another strength introverts often bring to romance. Rather than escalating conflicts with loud arguments, they tend to approach disagreements thoughtfully, seeking understanding and resolution rather than winning an argument. Balancing togetherness and personal space is essential in romantic relationships involving an introvert. They often need regular alone time to recharge, and this need should be understood as healthy rather than as rejection. Communicating emotional needs clearly helps prevent misunderstandings in romantic relationships, especially since introverts may not always express their feelings as openly or immediately as their partner might expect. And understanding different personality types, whether both partners are introverts or one is more extroverted, is key to building a relationship where both people feel respected, understood, and comfortable being themselves. Introverts at work and professional relationships. Let's expand our discussion beyond personal life and explore how introversion shows up in professional environments. Working within teams can be challenging for introverts, especially in workplaces that reward constant vocal participation. However, introverts often contribute enormous value through careful listening, thoughtful analysis, and well-considered suggestions. Networking without pretending is an important skill for introverts to develop. Rather than forcing themselves into an artificial, overly enthusiastic persona, introverts can build professional relationships by being genuinely curious about others and asking meaningful questions, which often creates far more memorable connections than superficial small talk. Building respect quietly is something introverts often excel at. Earning the trust and admiration of colleagues through consistent, high-quality work rather than constant self-promotion. Professional communication, including clear emails, thoughtful meeting contributions, and honest feedback, allows introverts to make a strong impact without needing to be the loudest voice in the room. Leadership through listening is a powerful and often underestimated approach to management. Introverted leaders often create environments where team members feel heard and valued, leading to stronger loyalty and collaboration. Building trust with colleagues happens gradually, through reliability and integrity, while creating influence without speaking the loudest shows that true leadership is about the quality of ideas and character, not simply about volume or dominance in conversation. When introverts need to step outside their comfort zone. While introversion should never be treated as something that needs fixing, there is real value in gently stepping outside one's comfort zone from time to time. It's important to clarify that growth does not mean changing your fundamental personality. It simply means expanding your comfort and confidence in certain situations. Meeting new people, even occasionally, can open doors to relationships and opportunities that might otherwise never appear. Starting conversations, even simple ones, becomes easier with practice, and each small success builds confidence for the next attempt. Joining communities, whether related to hobbies, interests, or professional goals, provides low-pressure opportunities to build new connections gradually. Public speaking, while intimidating for many introverts, can be developed as a skill over time, often becoming a source of pride and confidence once mastered. Building confidence generally happens through small, repeated experiences of stepping slightly beyond your comfort zone, rather than through sudden dramatic change. Trying new experiences, even small ones like joining a new class or attending an unfamiliar event, helps introverts discover strengths they may not have known they had. The key message here is that small steps create lasting confidence. There is no need to transform overnight or force dramatic change. Gradual, consistent effort, respecting your own natural pace, leads to genuine and sustainable growth. Daily habits that help introverts build strong relationships. Let's move now into practical daily habits, simple actions that introverts can incorporate into everyday life to strengthen their relationships over time. Consider messaging one friend each day, even with a short, simple message just to check in. Ask meaningful questions during conversations rather than defaulting to small talk. Practice active listening consistently, giving your full attention to whoever you are speaking with. Express appreciation regularly, letting the people in your life know that you value them, rather than assuming they already know. Schedule social time intentionally. since introverts often need to plan connection rather than relying on spontaneous energy. Protect your personal energy by recognizing your limits and honoring your need for rest. Smile more often, since this simple action can make you appear more approachable, even if you are not speaking much. Maintain eye contact during conversations, showing genuine engagement and presence. Practice gratitude regularly, reflecting on the positive relationships and experiences in your life. Be present during conversations and shared moments, setting aside distractions like phones or wandering thoughts. Reflect after conversations, considering what went well and what you might want to try differently next time. And finally, keep learning communication skills throughout your life, treating relationship building as an ongoing journey rather than a fixed destination. English Learning Reflection. Now, let's connect everything we've discussed today back to your English learning journey, because the skills we've explored are deeply connected to language learning as well. Listening carefully improves your English in powerful ways. When you focus intently on understanding native speakers, you naturally absorb pronunciation patterns, natural rhythm, useful vocabulary, and cultural expressions that textbooks often miss. This is why introverts often become excellent language learners. Their natural tendency toward careful listening gives them a significant advantage. Thinking before speaking, a common introvert trait, also helps in language learning by encouraging you to construct more thoughtful, accurate sentences rather than rushing and making unnecessary mistakes. Building vocabulary through observation, noticing how words are used in real conversations, films, or podcasts like this one, is often more effective than simple memorization from lists. Practicing conversations gradually, starting with simple exchanges and slowly building toward more complex discussions, matches the natural pace at which many introverts prefer to grow. Making mistakes without fear is essential for language growth, and it's worth remembering that even quiet, careful learners must accept imperfection as part of the process. Learning through meaningful discussions, rather than only memorization, creates deeper, more lasting language skills. I want to encourage you, especially if you consider yourself a quieter person, to keep practicing speaking, even when it feels uncomfortable. Your natural strengths in listening and reflection give you a wonderful foundation. Now it's simply a matter of building your speaking confidence step by step. Final reflection. Your quiet nature is your strength. As we approach the end of today's episode, I want to leave you with the most important message of all. You do not need to become louder to build meaningful relationships. You do not need hundreds of friends to live a rich, connected life. You do not need to change your fundamental personality to be loved, respected, and valued by the people around you. Strong relationships, the kind that truly last and truly matter, are built through kindness, trust, patience, listening, honesty, and consistency. These are qualities that come naturally to many introverts, qualities that quietly build some of the strongest human bonds that exist. While the world may sometimes seem to celebrate loudness, confidence, and constant social energy, it is often the quiet presence, the patient listener, the steady friend, who becomes someone's greatest source of comfort and support. If you are an introvert, or if you love someone who is, I hope today's episode has given you a new appreciation for the quiet strength that exists within this personality style. Your quiet nature is not something to overcome. It is something to embrace, nurture, and be genuinely proud of. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and congratulations on practicing your English listening skills throughout this entire episode. Every single episode you listen to, every new word you understand, and every idea you reflect on brings you one step closer to greater fluency and greater confidence, both in English and in life. I encourage you to keep improving, one conversation at a time, whether that conversation is in English, in your native language, or simply an internal conversation with yourself about who you want to become. If today's episode meant something to you, please consider sharing it with another English learner who might need to hear this message, especially if they've ever felt misunderstood because of their quiet nature. Before we go, I'd like to leave you with a few reflective questions to think about. Which idea from today's episode helped you the most? What is one relationship in your life that you would like to strengthen this week, even through a small action like sending a message or asking a meaningful question? And finally, what quiet strength do you already possess that you could use more often in your relationships, your work, or your personal growth? Thank you again for joining Code Your English today. Remember, every podcast episode you listen to is another step toward greater fluency, greater confidence, and a richer understanding of yourself and the people around you. Take care of yourself, be kind to your quiet nature, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye for now.